Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture. And before I introduce my guest and bring it on, and we're going to talk a bunch of cool stuff about wrestling, I do want to remind everybody that a bunch of links are up above. So obviously, go click those links, support wrestlers. Obviously, you can buy me a coffee. I live on Buy Me a Coffee. Obviously, my guest, Perry, lives on selling merch as well. So go out and buy merch and click those links because they do matter. And so I sort of tipped off my hat because I got professional wrestler Perry Von Fishes on. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited. And we have to thank Delmy Exo for this because she's the one who recommended when Rip and her were on about a week ago. So obviously, I do want to give credit where credit's due. And pretty much, we're just going to talk about 5 promotions and 9 people this entire interview because that's the last, I think, 5 years of your career is really just that summarized. And the place that I think is best to start is Pioneer Valley Promotions. And the individual is Johnny Idol. Because there's a bunch of stuff that happened over the PvP title. And obviously, what was that like getting to wrestle him? And I know we're skipping over a bunch of stuff in your career. You've been wrestling for like 12 years. I know that. So before anybody attacks me, I want to get that clear.
Yeah, so Johnny Idol was one of my trainers way back in '07 into '08 when I was first training. Back when he was younger and more spry, and I was younger but not more spry. I was a big heavy guy when I started wrestling. I was like 300 pounds. I was a big round guy. But then I moved away to California, wrestled for a really long time, came back, and yeah, I had never had a singles match with Johnny Idol, and I think the powers that be over at PvP knew that, and right place, right time. I came in still doing the persona of Perry that I had at the time, which was that of a sort of a stereotypical Richie rich snob kid with a full suit with a monocle and an ascot that was tearaway down to my trunks. And Johnny Idol was the salty old veteran baby face that everybody loved, and he was on what turned out to be his final run of his career, where he had essentially said, when I lose this belt, I'm done. So whoever unseats me, that's it. I'm retiring. And being the loyal student and friend that I am, I took it upon myself to do my best to try to drive him out of the industry, I guess. We had a few matches. The first little series of matches we had was so much fun because it was in conjunction with two of my buddies from California, Buddy Royal and Levi Shapiro, the Classic Connection. They came all the way out to the East Coast for a whole, like, it was like a 2 week string of shows where we were just on the road all the time. And in between, like, going to New Jersey and going to Rhode Island and all these other places, we would come back to Western Mass and there would be a PvP show. And they were always at ringside trying to help me drive Idol out of the industry. And that led to a big 6-man tag that was me and the Classic Connection against Johnny Idol, Tomahawk, now known as Rip Bison, and
It's a secret.
yeah, right. It could have been anybody. Just a very Rip Bison looking fellow, and ZPB, who at the time they were a tag team, and that was a lot of fun fighting in this sort of bar venue in Holyoke, Massachusetts. Throwing each other off the bar and stuff. That was pretty cool. And then that eventually led to John and I had one final shot to get the belt from him. But in that whole run, there was mixes of me against John, me stealing the belt away, not winning it, but just taking it, and then him getting it back. And we wrestled a triple threat with Rip under a different name at Fenway Park, and that was pretty cool. So
Yeah,
yeah,
to talk about this because this is why I bring this up and why I say we're going to be talking about like 5 people because as you're facing Johnny Idol, Rip, obviously Rip as Tomahawk, is getting involved and you're having some matches with him. It's a triple threat, some tag team stuff is going on. And then that sort of forked, I guess, the rivalry, where this rivalry started with you and Johnny Idol, and then it became you and Rip. And you and Rip basically tore it down all across New England a bunch of times, I think, in PvP. And then obviously you faced Tomahawk and captured the PvP title. There's something else I could say. If you change one letter in PvP, you get something else that might not be so good. But even still, it's the idea that what was this
also,
like?
Also, if you change one letter in PvP, you can get PvV, which would be very fitting.
That is very, very true. That is very true. We should just start changing it, and we should just shoot them an email over there, you know. But anyway,
yeah, they you know they're still taking time off, you know, following the I would say following the pandemic, but we're still in it. Following the shutdown portion, that shutdown portion one, depending on how things go from here on out. But yeah, it did eventually lead to me and Rip having a lot of matches. I've kept a spreadsheet of my matches because I'm a nerd. And at one point I looked, and in the course of about 1 year's time, we had close to 30 matches against each other all over the East Coast. We were in the ring together in Canada. We were in the ring in all through New England, New Jersey, down in New Orleans, in Texas. I mean, we were really all over the place, and pretty much everywhere we went, someone had seen a clip or something from one of the many crazy things we did in a match and said, "We want you to give us one of your matches." Which is, you know, was very kind of them, but admittedly some of the clips were pretty eye-catching. You know, we fought on top of a shipping container that was at an outdoor venue, you know, suplexing each other on top of it and then jumping off of it at each other. We fought on top of the ring truck at a carnival, which made for a great image because the sun was just going down, so all the carnival lights are on with a big Ferris wheel in back, and there we are brawling on top of a U-Haul. And then Rip dove off of it onto me because he's a maniac. No regard for his own well-being. And yeah, we fought so much over the course of that time that eventually we were so sick of wrestling each other that and you know we rode, you know, I think most people, we can peek behind the curtain here pretty good. I think we were riding to these shows together. We were taking the same car. And on the ride back from one of the shows, we were both kind of like, neither of us wanted to say, "I'm sick of wrestling you." You know, neither of us wanted to come out and say that. But we were both saying, like, boy, it'd be nice to do something new once in a while. And finally, the thing that made sense was we should team up. If we're a tag team, they can't book us to wrestle against each other.
I want to break this down a little bit before we get into the tag team stuff, because obviously you faced him and you beat him for the PvP title, but then he captured, I think, the Northeast Championship Wrestling title, and then that started a feud between the two of you and doing that. And so obviously that's something that's cool, where he didn't just get buried and lost the title. Now, you know, you're PvP's champion and you're facing him for that championship. And so obviously now you're getting into all this stuff, which is just wrestling each other over and over and over again, but all these title matches and non-title matches. And obviously this was building up, and then you mentioned a bunch of matches where, you know, it's, I don't want to say it's cinematic, but definitely, you know, you're wrestling at a carnival and you have almost theatrical, you know, carnival lights in the background and all these cool images happening. And then, yeah, you get sick of wrestling each other, and also it can get stale very quickly. Because when you're wrestling somebody 50 times, and I think you have like 200 matches in your career, if I'm not mistaken. So
it's considerably higher than that. But if you're going by cage match or one of those
yeah,
things, they're fairly incomplete. There's a
fairly, but my point that I'm trying to make is that I think it's safe to say that 20% of your career has been wrestling Tomahawk, around that, and Rip Bison around that number, I think, is a fair statement.
I would say if it was matches he was involved in, yes. Wrestling against him,
Yeah,
probably not quite that high, closer to 10%. But still, for 13 years, if 1 in 10 matches is against him,
that's a lot, and it can get very stale very quickly. Then you get into something where it's just like, what do you do next?
yeah, I will say the matches were never the same with Rip. Our styles were both changing all the time. If you look at the first time we wrestled each other, we're even forgetting about his face paint and my hairstyle and beard growing out. If you forget all of that and forget what we were wearing and just look at the people, we're practically unrecognizable in that match to the last time we wrestled each other, which was for the Limitless Wrestling the Road tapings during COVID. Just because our bodies were changing, we were both lifting, doing different diet things, and getting bigger and stronger. So our first match, it's almost lucha. It's a lot of running and jumping and springboards. And by the last time we fought, it was, I mean, just wailing on each other and throwing each other on our heads on the floor and stuff. Just a very all the worst decisions you could make.
And that's what we love. That's what we really want. We just want a good old fight type feel. And that's very much what Rip does. Rip said it, last week. He said, it's a Rip Bison match in Limitless. It's now become a term in Limitless Wrestling. And that's sort of what you guys delivered in some of your last boutings with each other is a Rip Bison fight. And, Rip is sort of crazy in the ring. And so it's very much that. And you're not much saner, I will say that.
Yeah, I'll say this. Bell to bell, I'm a lot more like Rip. Outside of wrestling, I'm a lot more like this, very self-deprecating, kind of a nerd. Rip is Rip 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He is always like that. I've been over to his house. I've trained in the dungeon. He is a nutcase, and he's always on. I've been in cars with him for over 30 hours straight on our way driving to Texas, and there is never a like, oh, Rip's tired and slowing down. He's just like that.
And so that brings me into where we sort of got. I put the brakes slightly, and now I'm going to release the brakes because obviously you two were getting sort of tired of wrestling each other, and then you formed this team called Mutually Assured Destruction. And obviously, very fitting name, very much the entire theme of this tag team. And this is crazy because you're facing teams like the Little Giants, and then it also came about weirdly where you're facing a bunch of teams, and then you're also in Ring of Thrones, and you're sort of on opposite sides, and then the match ended in no contest, and it got reset. And what was that entire thing about? 'Cause that's a mess in of itself.
So that's a show that the company out here, NCW, they run for the eastern side of the state and sometimes down in the Rhode Island. They have a show they do once a year where they it's a little bit like Battle Bowl where they swap the partners. And what they had done is they took all the teams for this little tournament, a one-night tournament, and just switched who was teaming with who all around at random. And it wound up that Rip was put with one member of the team Detox, who we had been feuding with at the time, and I was put with the other member. And then those two teams in the bracket happened to be against each other. So that did not last. That I think the first 30 seconds was me and Rip in the ring kind of rolling around, trying to get the better of each other, trying to just have a match. And, honestly, years of getting hit in the head, it's a little blurry what happened next. I can't remember if they just jumped us or if we said screw it and we jumped them. But it broke down and the teams were reset the way they should have been. And we had a tag match, but because the initial match was a no contest, both teams were out of the tournament. So as far as that tournament goes, not the greatest decision, but we had a lot of fun beating them up. I know that part I remember very clearly.
And obviously, even going further into mutually assured destruction, obviously you're wrestling in the NCW, and then you're also wrestling in a variety of other promotions. And what was this like to be on Rip's side and also getting the experience of having somebody, as you stated, because Rip doesn't just stop. He's a monster, and you're more like Rip bell to bell as well. But now, not necessarily having to take, a suplex from Rip, but doing that to your opponents on the other side, because now you have two men who are very much balls to the walls in the ring going at people. And there's a match in Limitless that we're going to talk about that really exemplifies that in a second. But I'm curious, and it's one of my favorite people in wrestling too, which is even worse. So,
Well, it was a nice change because as I said, I went through a lot of changes in the course of my career to that point. I started as kind of a heavy, slow kid, and I relied heavily on character work, which meant I was getting bumped around a lot, so I was sore all the time. And then I moved on to having lost 110 pounds. Now I was under 200 pounds, and now I was doing moonsaults and dives out of the ring, which also leaves you feeling awful the next day. And then I started hanging with Rip and lifting a lot more and eating a lot more protein and putting on, taking the size that used to be around my belly and putting it up on my shoulders and chest. And now I wasn't throwing myself at my opponents anymore. I was just throwing my opponents. Uh, and Rip was doing very much the same thing. And so yeah, it was there were a lot of discussions with opponents where we said, well, they don't want to do what we want them to do. They don't really have a lot of say in it. It's not like they can keep us from picking them up and chucking them. I mean, dead weight, some of these guys were not heavy enough to keep themselves down. Uh, so yeah, we were kind of it was a little bit of a rampage when the two of us were together, especially bell to bell. Backstage, there's a lot of me calming Rip down, uh, and being on the road, it's a lot of the two of us just. I mean, the two old men from the Muppets, if they hated each other more than they hated the show, that's the two of us in the car. We just constantly at each other's throats. We have spent insane amounts of time together over the last 3-4 years or so, and I think Rip would say the same thing I would say, that neither of us would describe the other as being a friend. We are colleagues, or maybe co-workers, co-conspirators, perhaps, maybe a better term. But yeah, teaming with Rip was a lot of fun because it was like all of a sudden everything that I had done to that point, where I held back because of, I'm not good at this or I'm not good at that. This always gets a reaction, so I'll keep doing that and not try this. All of a sudden, that was out the window, and it was, you know what? I'm going to do whatever I want 100% of the time, and who's going to stop me? And it felt the same. I could feel Rip becoming very much the same way, which, of course, I mean, you look at him now, he's on the singles tear of a lifetime. And it's because he threw out all concern and worry and said, I'm going to do exactly what I love in wrestling as hard and as often as I can do it. And he is crushing it because of that. I admittedly, I'd probably be right behind him. I do consider him, truth be told, to be a better wrestler than I am. But during COVID, again, pulling back the curtain a little, I have elderly parents who live nearby. So when it came time for tapings and to go do things, I would pass more often than I would go because I just couldn't have the risk. If they needed something, I needed to be available. And if I had just been at a taping with 60 other wrestlers, how confident could I be? Rip is a decade younger than me, making his parents at least a decade younger than my parents, but I believe they're even a little younger than that. So he doesn't have that concern. And thankfully, he was able to do a lot throughout the course of the pandemic. And man, it is paying off in spades now because Rip Bison, whether everyone knows it, because I know a lot of people know it, but those who don't, he's about to become a huge commodity. Like having him on your show is going to be a thing that people fight over the chance to do, and for good reason.
Yep, and I'm very fortunate that I got him and Delmy on, and it's a big deal. And trying to get him and ZPB on together, and that's going to be something that's a whole different ball game. And I understand, certain things. It's not the first time I've had certain people on my show. AG is a good example of that, and Tegan Knox is another one. That's a really good example that I've been on. So obviously, very, very cool to that degree. Billy Starks is another one for those who are interested in which that she is gold. And if you don't get her on your show now and you're hemming and hawing, you're an idiot, is how I prefer to say it. But the match that I do want to talk about was in Limitless, and it was against the Apostles of Chaos. And I love Logan Black. Chris Benet is great as well. And both of these guys can't just be thrown around by any stretch of the imagination. And Logan is so good and so underrated. And Chris Benet is a big guy in a lot of ways. And this was a fight. I mean, this was a war. It was a great match. And so what was this like? Because they're big right now too in
So
wrestling.
I'm loving to give a little of this behind the curtain view because trust me, it makes it much crazier. Uh,
Logan, I'll say something before you speak. Logan has revealed a lot of stuff
okay,
behind the curtain. So
cool.
anybody who's listened to the Logan interview knows a bunch of stuff that they probably shouldn't know necessarily. But continue.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, so that was the last match that Rip or I filmed for season 2 of The Road. All of season 2 of The Road for Limitless was filmed in 2 days. It was like 6 months of episodes filmed in 2 days. They filmed, I think it was 80 matches, something insane like that. Day one, we both had 3 matches. I had matches with American Beetle from Kaiju Big Battle, Travis Huckabee, who stretched me like a pretzel, which is crazy because I am not that flexible anymore.
And Travis can
And
do things. Travis can do things that are amazing.
he's very good that way. And I'm excited to see what he does when he comes to grind, but we'll get to that. I had these 3 really intense matches the day before, and then proceeded to go with the guys to one of the wrestlers who lives up that way's house to stay the night. But by the time we got there, and by the time we had to get up for tapings the next morning, I think we had like 3 or 4 hours sleep after having a ton of matches. And we got up the next morning, grabbed food at a gas station on the way to the show.
It wasn't a speedway, right?
Oh, God, for the light, I think it's a Cumbies.
That's a John Moxley joke.
Okay. But so we stop and get gas station food. So not the greatest start to a day. We get to the tapings and we're told, hey, tapings start in 20 minutes at 9:30 a.m. And first match we're taping is you and Rip. So that match we had, that was at 9:30 in the morning after 3 hours of sleep and 3 matches each the day before. The first thing I did in that match was dive over the top rope and land without being caught on the hardwood floor. That'll wake you up. So a couple hours after that, not really enough time to recover from that kind of match, Rip and I had the street fight with the Apostles of Chaos. And you can imagine in the moments leading up to that, just how totally psyched we were to do that. And yeah, then we get to that match, and it was a lot of chair swinging and fist throwing and bumps on the floor, bumps on the apron, and getting thrown around, which, at 6'3", 240 pounds, not a ton of guys throwing me around. But those two, perfectly capable. And then, of course, also throwing them around, which is almost as painful as being thrown by them, because they, like Rip and I, are big boys. I mean, this was a this was a heavyweight street fight. There wasn't a single person in the match who was under 240
It's
pounds.
also Logan looks small. And I say that very, very nicely, where Logan does not look big, but he is. If
Oh, yeah.
you
He's a big
go up,
dude.
he's big, he's jacked, and he is very good at what he does. And people don't understand that you look at him until you see him. He does not look the way he looks in person on TV or on IWTV. He
Yeah.
looks small on IWTV. Chris Benet looks big, regardless. But
Yeah.
Logan is a monster. Like when
Yeah.
I met Logan the first time, I'm like, what? You do not look the same on TV. TV takes away like 30 pounds on Logan.
Logan's one of those guys who, I mean, when you're standing next to him, he's, without being like a fat guy, he is a jacked guy. He's as wide as he is tall. I mean, it's like getting in a fight against like a small truck. I mean, bumping into him or having him run into you is like running into a wall. It's incredible. That said, uh, love both of those guys. Love them to death. Love the way they are in the ring. When you see them hitting me and you can hear that contact, I live for that. There's something about that where someone can just wail on you and all right, I'm coming back with one and it's going to be well earned. Like there's something about that makes a match way better. My experience with both of them in the ring, because we've wrestled them twice. We also wrestled them in a regular tag match for Blitzkrieg Pro. My experience with them is that it's the perfect pairing of tag teams, because the destruction in our name really shines through in those matches, and the chaos in their name really shines through in those matches. And when we did it in front of a live audience, they loved it. And when we did it for the road, the wrestlers ringside, and then the reaction online, the people loved it. So, it's hard to complain.
And let's even talk about the Rogues. There is one more. I think you also got to wrestle Eric Johnson, who is also on a tear, I think.
Yes, I wrestled him. That was very recent. That was at the tail end of May. That was one of the first audience back shows. That was for it's one of the student showcase shows for Limitless, which is a little bit of a misnomer. It's a great place for their students to show out, but they are surrounded by veterans, and Rip will be on those shows. Ace Romero will be on those shows, and you certainly wouldn't call me, Rip, Ace, Eric, any of us students at this point in our career. And yeah, I wrestled Eric Johnson there. I think I was number 21 in his undefeated streak. So yes, he did beat me. But I got to do a few things that I don't often do because he's a bigger dude. I wasn't about to pick him up for a power bomb. Especially not with the low ceiling in that venue. I don't know if you watched the match. It's a very low ceiling, and I'm tall enough that if I stood on the first rope there, I would have been bumping my head against the sprinkler system.
You're not St. Louis Anarchy, who breaks their ceilings.
The first match on that show, I will say the first match on that show, Dave Dwyer jumped off the second rope and definitely knocked a tile loose. And yeah, the powers that be at Limitless were not happy. The boys in the back were thrilled. We were losing it. We couldn't believe that we just saw that happen. But yeah, I wrestled Eric there, and I did a tilt-a-whirl head scissors. Totally normal thing for me to do. Did a suicide dive. Yeah, just all the time, just diving out of rings.
And so obviously I bring that up because I really am enjoying Eric Johnson's undefeated streak, and I'm super excited to see where that goes. And I want him to be in the title picture because obviously I think it's going to be very interesting. And also whoever beats him is going to be a big deal. Whoever beats him and breaks that undefeated title string, and it's going to project somebody, and hopefully somebody who needs the boost is going to get it more than somebody who doesn't need it. There's one person that I'm hoping beats him, but I'm going to keep that.
The real interesting thing about Eric Johnson and that undefeated streak, I don't know if you know this or not, uh, as of what's been uploaded to IWTV, because there have been two Limitless events that are not live on there yet. They happened and they're not up. As of what's on there now, Eric Johnson has never been on a Limitless main roster show. If you think the run he's on and he's a trainer at their school, you know, a well-respected vet up in Maine, never been on one of those shows. And I will say, because it's already been widely advertised, he has, in non-IWTV timeline now, real life, he has been on a main roster show at Limitless in front of a live crowd. It has happened now. I was there for that show. And they, you know, they announced all the matches for that. So I don't think I'm breaking any rules here by saying what it was, because it was all advertised on Twitter before the show. He main evented that show. Main evented against Ace Romero in a last man standing match. I won't spoil how things go. I won't tell you how things go one way or the other, but I will say, huge career moment for Eric Johnson to be on that show and in that.
And it's going to be coming out soon, right?
Yeah, oh, it's got to be soon. I know this Friday is the show that was right before that is coming out on IWTV, so probably a week or two after that.
So is this the 28th, August 28th show?
It may well be, yeah.
It's either the 27th or the 28th. It has to be one of those, because it would be crazy. If it's not this Friday, then it has to be the one after.
Yeah, I would assume it's one or the other.
It's pretty much on IWTV though. So if anybody has an IWTV, you know, subscription, they can figure it out. You know, I don't want to mislead anybody down a path here.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm saying, like, I don't want to give away anything I might know from that show. I'm happy to give away what I was doing at that show, because I was live posting it at the time. I, like Eric, have never wrestled on a main roster Limitless show. Eventually, I'm sure. But I have now served twice, once before the pandemic and once just at this last show, as the backstage interviewer. A role that I, you know, persona-wise, it's a little weird that I fit there. But at this point, you know, again, this is a little behind the curtains. I've thrown all semblance of whatever the Perry character is clear out the window. And I've decided that, you know, I'm not getting any younger. My time in wrestling is definitely, my days and years are numbered at this point. I'm just going to do whatever makes me happy all the time. I've started wearing monster truck shirts cut into crop tops to the ring, because I think that's funny and kind of cool. I wore a shirt of the band The Residents to the ring, a band no one really has ever heard of, even though they've been around since the 70s and have 90 albums. You know, just doing whatever makes me happy. When I did the interviewing at Limitless, I wore a Weird Al Yankovic shirt. I wanted to look like a pro. Truth be told, this is a little behind the curtain. I walked into the venue and I walked up to Randy Carver, who runs Limitless Wrestling. And I said, "Am I still doing the interviews?" And he said, Yep. Thanks so much for doing it. I said, "Great. I have wardrobe choices for you." And on two hangers, I held up a dark gray polo shirt and a bright baby blue Weird Al Yankovic shirt. And he looks at them and he goes, "Yankovic." The man's got good taste. What can I say?
And even to go off of that, because I actually think that that's funny. I think it's going to be brilliant in a lot of ways. And I also think it's just, you know, it makes Limitless not take themselves too seriously. And I think that's something that's super nice about Limitless right now, is that Limitless, when I watch Limitless, you know, wrestling in ICW, No Holds Bar, you know, I view Limitless as a fun show. I view it as something that I can relax to, where it's not, you know, complete suspension of belief like Camp Leapfrog, but it's like a step above Camp Leapfrog as far as, you know, I can relax and chill out on my Friday night. I don't have to worry about too much, anything else dealing with that. And it's very relaxing for me to watch a Limitless show. And I also know that, you know, you could have something like Love Doug in there. And Ava Everett and Love Doug just make me laugh, or the Higher Society. I love those too, and they're killing it. Obviously, we're just on Billy Dixon's project, and that was great. And so I love both of them, and that's something that I thoroughly enjoy about Limitless. Also,
Yeah,
I like Alex Price. So Alex
Limitless
Price
loves their wrestlers who can just go out there and kill it. You know, the kind of wrestlers who, if you were to wash away 100% of their persona, their look, whatever, you'd still watch the match because it's a crazy good match. But then they also love their characters. You know, they're not afraid to have characters that really shine through, and that's where you end up with Love Doug. Really, it was the in for Becca, who of course Becca now, she's still super new to the business. She's amazing. She goes out and does stuff that almost no other wrestler can do, and you get Ava Everett, who is such a character. I've known her since before her debut, and
You did
I'm
all my freaking logo stuff for AG's projects that I sponsored. And I didn't even know that until she was on my show. She's like, yeah, I know your logo. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is really weird. Like, I didn't know you were playing with my logo. And then I said, I don't know how I feel about that. But anyhow,
But yeah, I'm super proud of her and how she's evolved and like found herself. There's just an incredible crop of younger talents who before the pandemic no one had heard of, and when that presented an opportunity to them, man, did they jump on it. And you got to be proud of them. You got to respect them for it, and
and then
it's made the scene really interesting.
And to even go further, a bunch of people have exited out of Limitless. A few are returning. And upon a bunch of those people's exiting, they also uplifted the new crop of kids in a lot of ways, which is something very cool. And
Yeah,
obviously, one of them's returning, good old AG. And so that's going to be very exciting. I know AG is on at least one of those shows because he made an appearance already back. And so this is getting very exciting as well with that. And so, what is that like to now be involved with Limitless? And well, he's
it's
back.
it's great to see AG back. The first show where he was back, I was there. I was not involved in a front of house capacity. I was involved helping with the show, but sort of behind the scenes at that one. And I didn't know until the car ride up that he was going to be there. This is like a friend I've known for years. I the first Limitless show I ever went to, I rode up with AG. It was and Ava. It was before Ava had debuted. Um, and so to find out like on the ride up from someone else in the car, they were like, "Oh, AG is going to be there." I had no idea. That was such a great surprise. And then he was. I will, because I believe they advertised the match before the show as well. He is on the second of those shows as well. He wrestles Matt Cross. So great matchup there. And it's so cool to be around and to see him there. And like that's one of the really great things about Limitless and like Blitzkrieg, where I also work in Connecticut. Just being able to like meet and interact with and talk to some of the talents who are have broken through to that next level. Whether they're someone that you knew beforehand, I knew AG when he was a teenage referee. He refed a match that I did at like some crappy fair show,
I know
and
that.
then
Spoke about that.
and then and then knowing him now as a superstar, and yeah, he'd hate me saying that, but yeah, knowing him now as a superstar, and then being at those shows and getting to like chat with people that I've been on other shows with that I haven't seen. Like Danhausen was just on a Limitless show, and I hadn't seen him since Black Label Pro, the last WrestleMania before the pandemic. We were both in like a battle royal together, and that was like the last time we had seen each other. So it was cool to, and that was before he really like took off. So
That was also
getting
when Warhorse started taking off too, and like
yeah, it was literally like 2 months later. Those two guys were the most talked about guys in indie wrestling. But that weekend, they were like anybody else there. It was like right before, like it was like they were ready and waiting to pull the ripcord, and they just took right off. But yeah, getting able to like talk to Danhausen, AG, all these people coming in, down at Blitzkrieg, they've got Ultramantis Black is coming in for a show really soon. That's going to be awesome. It's really cool to get to like talk to people who've sort of been to that next level.
And now I want to table Blitzkrieg because we're going to talk about Blitzkrieg, but I do need to mention ZPP
Sure.
because I love ZPB. And ZPB was my second interview actually of this year. Devontae, secondly ZPP was technically first, but Devontae's took the first spot. And so obviously you two are the monarchy in Right Coast Pro. And so I love this. This is sort of the snobby rich kid attitude. This is the entire idea. And it goes a little bit deeper. It's obviously a little bit bigger than just the two of you, the stable. But what was that like? Because this stable is brilliant. And
So that is I will admit a thing of the past. We do not work there anymore. There's a long and very funny story there that I would definitely say for off the air. But my history with ZPB goes all the way back to the beginning of my career. My first singles match in front of an audience was against ZPB. And again, we would have been unrecognizable. I was a chubby, rich snob who didn't know what he was doing. And ZPB at the time was essentially the Highlander, with big pleather pants and a sword when he came to the ring. And he was, I don't know, 110 pounds soaking wet. Like he was emaciated. He was so skinny. Flash forward to when I moved back from California, he's a completely different person. He's doing this French aristocrat gimmick with a long wig and this whole thing, which was not far off from what I was doing, coming out in a suit that was covered with $100 bills that was all tearaway. So when the opportunity came to work for Right Coast Pro, and they really like their gimmicks, they like strong characters, they took one look at us and were like, you guys are our villain tag team. This is what we're after. So they came to us and asked for some names, and they suggested the name The Money and the Monarchy. And we hated that name. We hated it so much. And we had so many great ideas for entrance music that we sent them. And when we showed up, we had pitched 10 other ideas for names. We showed up and the big screen said Money in the Monarchy. And they were playing some other music that we'd never heard before. So, we just kind of shrugged and said, all right, well, let's go do this. And I think our first match there, we won their tag belts and never lost them. We were their tag champions the last time we wrestled there. And then we never went back again. And suddenly someone else was the tag champs. It's a really, I don't know how they explained that away to any fans who were paying attention or anything. They, we wanted to come back and drop those belts. It's a long story. But we became that team, which was a spinoff from previously ZPB and RIP under another assumed name, were the Aristocrats. So then we became the Money and the Monarchy, and then when we left Right Coast Pro, that was kind of the last time ZPB and I tagged together. We haven't tagged since, but I have a feeling that we would still get on really well, because with the direction my persona's gone and the direction his persona's gone, you talk about a bruiser tag team. I mean, it wouldn't be far off from me and Rip teaming together. A perfect example of which is, I don't know if you saw on the road Rip versus ZPB, but man, yeah. I was sitting in the crowd for that match, losing my mind.
I didn't expect it to go the way it went.
I mean, it was incredible, right?
Especially, and I'm going to say this because the way I viewed it is that I find ZPB to be a very entertaining character. Like, he had the bottle, wine on a pole match and stuff like that. And I find, he's having, he's drinking his wine in the middle of the ring, and then some guy takes his wine. And I find it to be, very character driven. And then all of a sudden him and Rip have a very technical, very, hard hitting match. Wasn't expecting that because it was very much out of his character of what I was expecting. And I think that's something that a lot of people are just not ready for. And it was awesome. I enjoyed it, but at the same time, I was still getting accustomed to Rip, and I was getting somewhat accustomed to ZPP, and I knew both of them what their styles were. And then obviously throwing them together, I'm like, this is going to be sort of a comedy thing, and it wasn't.
Yeah, there were two people, three people. There were three people sitting in the audience at those tapings that knew exactly how that match was going to be. There were only three of us. Everyone else was probably thinking the way you were thinking. But me and Delmy and Johnny Torres, who's one of the announcers up there and does a lot of work behind the scenes, we're very close with ZPB and Rip. And we were well aware of what those two were capable of. And we knew that given free reign to go out there and do whatever they wanted, it was going to be a terrifying brawl. And I mean, there are moments in that you'll hear high pitched screams when they do something scary. That's me. You can't tell because I'm wearing a mask, but that's me. And occasionally you'll hear someone going, oh, like really low. That's Delmy across the ring being psyched because she loves it when those two kill each other. I mean, everyone else was freaking out and just kind of stunned and making a lot of noise, but they were just so taken aback by it. But Johnny Torres, Delmy Exo, and Perry Von Vicious, oh man, it was Christmas for the three of us.
And to even talk about Limitless, because obviously I didn't ask before and I want to ask now, is that what was that like to wrestle in front of other wrestlers? Obviously, I've spoken to Delmy about this and a few other people. You know, obviously, Price has been on, and then Jesse, or Nolan, I want to say, who had a few matches, and she's brand new. She is classified as a student. You know, obviously, it's a weird entity to be wrestling in front of your peers, them
Yeah.
to cheer, and then dealing with everything, and then
So
obviously
I'll
been on.
say it was not a totally new experience. You know, I had done dojo tapings for Limitless before. They did those a lot. You can find like me and Alec Price had a match at one of those where it's just the other wrestlers. I had done tryout matches for companies where it's just the other wrestlers. And in all of those situations, it is 10 times more intimidating than wrestling in front of wrestling fans. Because wrestling fans, if something doesn't go quite right, they don't know. You know, if you change plans mid match and do something different, they don't know. But the other wrestlers, they know. They know. And yeah, we're all rooting for each other. We want everyone to have killer great matches because the better Rip and ZPB is, the more eyes are watching the next week when I wrestle Travis Huckabee. The better me and Travis are, the more people are watching the next week when Jeremy Leary wrestles CPA. You know, it all builds. We all want everyone to be amazing. But at the same time, no one will see it and call you out faster than the other wrestlers because you know there's 10 people sitting around ringside going, I could have done that better. And you don't. That's the place that you want to fail the least is when your peers are watching. And you know, I can imagine for some of the younger talents who are really new at Jesse Nolan, for example, that it's really intimidating. You know, an unproven younger student in front of all these wrestlers. And then you have Rip or Delmy or Ashley Vox, who are on incredible career trajectories. If something doesn't go great in front of that room of wrestlers, they've had 20 other amazing matches in front of those wrestlers.
It's a bad night out. It's sometimes.
Yeah. And then there's me, who is a little bit like Eric Johnson, sort of the old man on the roster. You know, again, saying I'm almost a decade older than Rip. There's a lot to prove there. You know, you don't want to go out and have everyone say, boy, you know, in his mid 30s, he really can't keep his wind or, you know, anything like that. So I go out there and Boy, you watch me and Rip go out there when we have that match. I came back later and watched it, and for the life of me, I have no idea how I did what I did. Because you watch us go in the first 5 minutes of that match, there is no stop and catch your breath. It is just two guys who are 240 pounds sprinting at full force and diving and jumping and throwing each other nonstop. And for the life of me, I have no idea how I did it.
Yeah, I could see that. I've never been inside a wrestling ring. I have no desire to. I enjoy wrestling. I wouldn't mind commentating, but I do not want to step inside a ring. It does not seem like an easy task. I think it'd be very hard, and also rope rings, from what I understand, can hurt. So I am not a sadist. I prefer, I like cushiony things. I don't like to be hurt. It's. I have my own ways. The closest thing to pain I enjoy is a whiskey going down neat, and that's about it. So that's where I stand on the issue here with all of that. And then obviously Limitless is just a very cool place right now.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
very
Yeah.
hot, company, and they've done a lot of stuff right as far as stories. Also, they positioned themselves while Beyond wasn't running. Limitless was one of the only companies that was running constantly and consistently on IWTV. And certain people have disagreed with me on that statement, but it's helped tremendously from a business
And
point.
and they were very smart about how they did it. Like I said, all of season 2 was filmed in 2 days. So for that weekend, all those talents were tested. You had to show up, and because it was pre-vaccine, you had to show up and show your test that was within the last 4 days, negative for COVID. It was temperature checks, which I know are not a perfect,
It's a
not a
starting
perfect metric, but it's a good start. It was honor system that you didn't have any symptoms or anything, but it was also like you were there all day. If you had symptoms, someone was going to notice and say something. So no one showed up with the sniffles or anything. Everyone wore the masking at Limitless was outstanding and made me feel so much better about being there. Basically, unless you were around the people who rode in the car with you or your opponents, everyone had masks on all the time. It was Everyone was great about that, and there was hand sanitizer everywhere. And, everything that you could do. The ring was being wiped down with the wipes and stuff between matches. Everything that could be done was being done, and that made me feel really good about that. But it was really smart because they did 3 sets of tapings, and that was it. That mitigates so much risk. It makes everyone so much safer to just do it all at once. That way you're not traveling back every week, every 2 weeks to film content. They got all their content for the pandemic in 3 tapings. It's such a smart way to do it. And, they were able to, with the same talent there, say, okay, well, you're going to be on for this many weeks. Let's give you these matches and these stories, and let's build things out that way. Just a brilliant way to handle an unfathomable situation.
And even beyond going unfathomable, the idea is having an actual battle plan going out. Obviously, right now I'm in the middle of season 2 on this show. Probably I'm going to plan out a good chunk of season 3, ahead of time, and I have some things prospect wise, but it's something that I got to figure out how to do because it makes a lot of sense. And while it's not stories per se, podcasting, even having a battle plan of understanding, saying, hey, I know that every quarter these 6 people are going to have something going on, and they're going to be on in this order, and this project goes with this project. It is very, very smart, and it's extremely helpful because social media-wise, it makes a lot of sense as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to, if you're releasing content of any type for any purpose, you have to plan stuff out. You have to be willing to adjust as you go, of course, but you have to have a release strategy, and that's really good that you plan out ahead like that. Because clearly,
I'm going to. I haven't yet.
Well, I mean, if Limitless is any kind of model to follow, it works.
Yeah, it's something that I have to do for my season 3, in which that versus season 2 is extremely reactionary, meaning I plan everything out on Wednesdays and Thursdays for that week, And it gives me a lot of freedom because if somebody is red hot, I could just drop right into them. And then most times, I would say 50% of the time, they say yes. And all of a sudden, I'm catching them coming off being red hot or they're getting red hot. Very helpful. But at the same time, it's also very stressful. It's very stressful. I had an interview cancel legitimately at 2 o'clock, and then I was able to adjust and actually have somebody coming on at 9 because I'm able to do that now. But even still, I much prefer to go the limitless route.
Yeah. It's good to have a plan because you can always change later. But if you have nothing,
I agree. And then obviously let's talk Blitzkrieg because Blitzkrieg is a very cool place.
yeah,
And Shook Crew's up there. Obviously Jeremy Leary, Skyler are doing some. I know you just wrestled there just recently. And I think you were facing Davian and Skyler, and it's the top dogs. And it's a little weird of a match because Jeremy Leary and Skyler are supposed to get married at some point, and they're opposing each other. And so, at least there wasn't a judge in the ring. So let's put it that way. I'm sure when I tweet this out at them, they're going to really appreciate that. But even going beyond that, obviously you've been involved in Blitzkrieg, wrestling there, and obviously I think Kurt Hawkins is in there. A lot of people from Cap are in there. Shook Crew's up there, and they bring in a lot of people. So what is that like? Because it is very much a networking type of area as well. Smart Mark Sterling is involved in Blitzkrieg.
Yeah. It's so weird because like a lot of the names you just mentioned are like people that I just knew. Jeremy Leary, I trained with him. Me, him, and the aforementioned Johnny Torres, the announcer for Limitless. We all had our first match the same night on the same show back in 2008. So we were of the same graduating class from our wrestling school. So to team with Leary now is actually really kind of cool. Like that's a story that's 13 and a half years in the making. It's very cool. It's a great crew there. Everyone there is fantastic. There's some folks that are there and then not there. They bring in certain names, you could say, here and there. But then they do have their set crew, the Shook crew, Bobby Orlando, that all those guys who are just delights to be around. It's a very interesting space backstage because everyone there, no matter if there's someone who's working every weekend, multiple times a weekend, someone who's really well known, or someone who's more local, and we have some younger performers on there, 50 Cal and the Great Nuka, who are trainees at a school nearby here. No matter who it is, everyone is helpful and friendly, and just everyone's willing to just help everybody else out, and that's such a cool environment. The shows themselves, they have less of a Limitless and Beyond sort of have this aura about their shows. There's this sort of like mid 2000s ROH aura about those shows. Limitless has a lot of the same talents and talents that are certainly comparable. TV talents are on the shows, but their shows feel a little bit more like a party. There's a party vibe there, and not just because the last show we did was at a brewery, and before that, the last show they did was their annual luau. But all the shows have sort of a party vibe, a lot of that really does come down to Jeremy Leary and Skyler, who do again pulling the curtain back. It's their company, and the two of them, they just want everyone, fan, performer, whoever, to show up and have a great time, and they take that very seriously.
And obviously Blitzkrieg is cool too because Blitzkrieg is very accessible.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. And I'm not saying Limitless isn't accessible. Beyond is also accessible in a lot of ways. But I find that Blitzkrieg streams on Twitch. And Twitch for the most part is free. And then they also stream on other people's, Twitches. I think they stream on, Matt Cardano's and Kurt Hawkins's, the major. Well, I can't even think of that podcast's name, but they stream on that, and so a lot of eyes get on that. And it's very accessible, And so that's something that's very cool about Blitzkrieg is that, it's accessible and it's, you can watch it very much for free. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
helpful for seeing.
I will say the show we just had on Sunday wasn't live streamed, but it will be going up after the shows have been streamed. They all get uploaded to IWTV as well, so they're all available there. And this one was a good one because that tag match you mentioned, Davian and Skylar, the top dogs, against me and Jeremy Leary, that was the main event. I went from the last show where I was a last minute addition to a scramble match to main eventing this show. And boy, this match, I think it delivered. If you've been on Twitter, you've probably seen how the match ended. It was pretty crazy. And again, I don't think I'm giving anything away because it's all over Twitter. Skylar got Leary onto a pallet that happened to be on a forklift. The pallet was then raised, the two of them in the air, and it drove over next to the ring, and she threw him off of it through a door. Yeah, that's a hell of a way to end a show. I of course didn't see it when it happened, which is very disappointing because win or lose, that's a moment you'd like to take in. I unfortunately was on the searing hot asphalt, feeling the effects of Davian's finisher, the Davy End Your Life. So I did not see it happen, but I heard it. I'll say this, you never want that to happen to your tag partner, but better him than me.
I'm sure he'll say the same if it was on the other foot. I'm more than certain because that's just the type of guy the leader of the Hive is.
Yeah.
So there we go on that. And then obviously let's talk about what's going on with, I think, Grind Pro.
Yeah. This is a really cool project that I'm very excited about. Everyone knows it's Delmy Exo and Rip Bison's new promotion.
They spoke about it on my show last Monday, not yesterday, but the Monday before that. Yep. And so obviously, people watch that, and then even going forward, I haven't even started pushing it out yet, and it's done okay. But what is your involvement, and what is that with being involved? Because obviously, it's hitting a different side of, I think, Western Massachusetts. And obviously, it's not stepping on it Beyond's toes. It's not stepping into Limitless's territory a little bit. It's not conflicting dates and all that stuff that's going on. And obviously, it's a very tightly run show so far.
Yeah. I'm very excited for the debut show. My involvement has essentially been that of a consultant, more or less. Rip will come to me and Johnny Torres. We're sort of like,
family.
Yeah. I mean, really, like, at this point, it basically is. Like, Rip, Torres, ZPB are like brothers, and Delmy and Ashley, really, and even Layla, they're all like my sisters. It's a whole crew of us, and we're very tight. So, of course, we want this to be very successful. And so far, my involvement, I will be part of the production team. I will be helping out, making sure that the show runs smoothly. Helping with any. I've been talking with both of them about content release strategies, all that kind of stuff.
So to even talk about that, because one of the things that I think people don't understand about wrestling is that your ring crew matters. I just had Kaya McKenna on. She does GCW ring crew. GCW crew is not like any other ring crew out there. It's probably the closest thing to it is ICW No Holds Bars ring crew, where you're actively working. You're actually moving stuff. And then there's obviously production, commentating team, making sure that certain things make sense, how to shoot a show. That's all production team. And it is very important because more people are going to be able to watch it online when it's distributed. Then we're going to be at that show. Yep. And it's important for the people at the show to have a good experience, but you can't control how somebody turns their body. But you can control how, a camera angle is shot, whether that's live streamed, whether it's put onto Fight TV, whether it's, just shot and then edited down later. But all that stuff matters because my experience, if I'm not at that show, is through the camera and how it's shot. And so that's very important, not to mention lighting and even a bunch of other stuff. And even, where do you put the entrance for wrestlers to come out? And it sounds like a stupid thing to say, but it's very important from a production standpoint that it makes sense.
It's a thing that I specifically am keenly aware of because I came into wrestling at a time where it wasn't really talked about or thought about on the indies. 2008, there was no streaming. YouTube was still in its infancy. The idea of releasing your stuff online or even recording your matches
I was
at live
about to say
shows,
that. I was about
yeah,
to say that recording something wasn't that big, and some companies had stuff, but that's why some of this stuff on VHS, people covenant over it because it's like indie wrestling from 1997, and it's like somebody on a shitty ass camcorder filmed it, and it's the best video of it out there, which is crazy.
I was fanatical about it when I got started. One of the first things I did was go out and spend more money than I could reasonably afford to buy a camcorder. And it was a little digital camcorder, and I would bring it home and I would plug it into my iMac, and every match I've ever had is on my YouTube, with the exceptions now, years later, where companies actually release and film their stuff, of stuff where the company, it's on their YouTube. And even then, I've ripped the match, saved it, uploaded it to my YouTube, and it's set to private. That way I have it. I've been fanatical about that forever. And as a result, I've had a lot of work framing things, editing things. So I've had the opportunity to learn a great deal. And that's one of the reasons that Randy up at Limitless is so quick to put me in a backstage interviewer role, because I can, try to help whoever's running production back there, squeeze the guys in so they're in frame, stop someone from walking away. I'm literally, in some of the interviews you'll see, I'm putting my hand on their back, grabbing their shirt and pulling them back into frame quietly while they do their promo. And it's because a lot of guys don't have practice with it, or they've never been on the other side of the camera, so they don't know. And anytime I can help with that is great. And that's part of what I'm bringing to Grind. Delmy is going to be very busy making sure the show runs smoothly. Rip will be busy making sure the show runs smoothly and wrestling. And they're going to need people like me, like Johnny Torres, making the backstage, the interviews, the setup of the cameras for the ring. All of that runs smoothly. Johnny Torres was initially slated to be part of the commentary team for this first show, and he said, "We've got two other perfectly capable people here in Sam Laterna and Troy Nelson. Let them be commentary. Put me backstage. I can do interviews, or I can help run production, whatever is needed." And that's Johnny Torres, and I believe ZPB will be there also, and the three of us will be helping to run things backstage. It's an interesting thing about Grind, because every other company, especially around this area, Western Mass, when someone announces they're running, you just assume, oh, all their friends, all the guys they run with are going to be on the show. It's going to be, the Rip and Friends show or the Delmy and Friends show or whatever. And one of the first conversations we had, I can only speak to my specific conversation, but as I understand it, a similar conversation was brought up by Zach and was brought up by Johnny Torres. I essentially told Rip, do not book me if I don't fit exactly what you need on that show. If you have a show where I do fit and I'm what you need, absolutely put me on. But if you have a show and there's not a spot that screams use Perry here, or if what I'm doing stylistically in the ring these days isn't going to fit your product, don't book me because I'm your friend. Like, don't feel like you have to, because I knew he wouldn't. I knew that this product means a lot to him and to Delmy, to both of them, really. And I knew that they weren't going to sully it just to put their friends on. But I wanted to make sure that they knew they didn't have to feel pressured to do that. And that was a very honest conversation we had. that frankly, I can't imagine a whole lot of other situations where I'd be telling that to a promoter. Usually the conversation would go, "So you're running now, huh? You got any space on that show for old Perry?" But instead, I told him, look, there's other ways I can help out. I'm going to be at the show no matter what. I'll show up and help out. You know, if I don't fit as an on-screen persona, by all means, keep me behind the camera somewhere, and I'll make sure things run smoothly. And that's I think that's the kind of thing that I feel comfortable doing because I've spent so much time on the video end of things.
Yeah, I know the feeling about that, in which I'm very much the same way, where I don't have many friends, but I have a lot of people who run podcasts, and I say, look, if I don't fit what you're looking for, it's nothing personal. Business is different than friendships. And if you come swinging an axe at me and you expect me to be your friend, that's a different discussion. But that's a whole different ballgame right there. But that's something that's going to be very interesting about Grind. I'm very excited because obviously I think there's maybe 20 wrestlers collectively that are all involved, maybe even 18. There's only one tag team match, and there's 4 in that match, and the rest I think are singles. And so I think there's 7 matches, I think, or 8 matches on the card. And some of this stuff, I know it's being released weekly, week by week by week.
Yeah.
And so obviously, but I know there's only one tag team match. That I think confirmed.
Yeah, and I'm being very careful with what I say because I don't want to slip and reveal anything.
We know Rips Wrestling. That has been confirmed.
And yeah, well, and if ever there was a style of product that was custom built for Rip Bison, I mean, if there's any place outside of a company he runs on his own where he would fit perfectly, it's Japan, man. I mean, you look at the way he runs, that's Hansen, that's Kobashi, that's Dr. Death, that's all of them. That's who he is. So he is ideal for this product.
Also, it helps save a lot of money because it's right. One more talent you don't have to buy. And he said it himself, and I don't think that's a secret, where, if you're running a promotion and you're the promoter and you're doing commentary, you're solving problems piece by piece by piece, and every dollar matters. And I know all about that. So I've been running a podcast and this show and several others for almost 8 years. And there's a reason why I do all my own editing, because it gets expensive quickly. And every dollar that I can save in one area, I can deploy to another. And that's what matters. So obviously there's a bunch of fun stuff coming. You know a lot more than I do. But I do know that Rip's wrestling on it, even though I don't think he officially announced himself as talent, but one of them was going to wrestle on this. And I don't think Delmy's wrestling. I think that's also confirmed.
I believe, because I tuned in when they were on the show, I believe she did say that. So I think I'm comfortable saying that, to my knowledge, no, Delmy is not wrestling on this show.
And so I think it again, 4 interviews in, my brain is all scrambled up from everything. I don't even remember what I did like 3 hours ago. So clearly, maybe I'm how your mind gets blurry, mine's getting blurry too. So having said all that, obviously I sort of want to touch a little bit on COVID because you mentioned it and we spoke about Limitless, but I am curious where you see all of this going, because obviously things are getting very complicated. I live in Connecticut. I'm not that far from New York City. New York City is taking a very draconian measure to deal with COVID. Whether that's right or not right, I think it's extreme, and maybe it's necessary. That's up for everybody's discussion, where you need a vaccination card to go pretty much anywhere in New York City and your ID to do anything. So obviously they're taking that measure. And well, a bunch of stuff, from my world is happening. Anime NYC's coming, New York Comic Con's coming. And I know that Grind is about 2.5 weeks after New York Comic Con, and it's up in Massachusetts and not New York City. But where do you see wrestling going with COVID and upticks and everything that's sort of going on as we also head into winter months?
I mean, it's hard to say. Right now they're saying, vaccinated or not, you should be wearing masks if you're indoors with large groups of people.
Booster shots are a thing as well.
Yeah, booster shots. They're now saying that's 8 months after your last round of the initial, they're suggesting you get a booster. So
Oh,
for a lot of
so
people, that's still a ways in the future.
yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where we just got to see how things play out. There's really no telling what's going to happen next week. We could wake up tomorrow and there could never be another case of COVID ever. Obviously, that's not what's going to happen, but that's an extreme version of what could happen. It could, things could start to get better as more people are getting vaccinated. But what we've seen is enough people dragged their feet and enough people shouted, "Ma freedom, ma freedom." And now we're in the state we're in. We've allowed it to, mutate to where now the virus seems to care a little bit less about
I
whether
mean,
you're
I know
vaccinated.
people. I know people who have gotten COVID vaccinations
Yeah,
and got COVID. Somebody close to me
yeah,
just got it, and she was vaccinated. So and then my mom was close to that person, and she didn't get it, which means I really won because I don't have to deal with my mom being sick. Thank God, thank
yeah.
God. Count your blessings. But it's kind of crazy that obviously it's a very very undiscriminating disease for everybody, vaccinated or not vaccinated,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know where it's going, and this is why I'm not going to wrestling shows. I'm not going to anime cons, and for me, 2020 was a down year. 2021 is also a down year because the way I see it is that there's just too many uncertainties for me to even think about going to a wrestling show at this point is just so out there. I don't even feel comfortable hanging out with my friends so much right now.
Honestly, apart from wrestling bookings, I only leave the house to get groceries. My wife and I were fortunate enough. We work for colleges, and we were sent home day one of the shutdown. That was it. And in fact, we weren't even sent home. We were already home. It was the Sunday that the world kind of said, "Oh, don't anyone go to work tomorrow." We got text messages that said, "Stay home. We'll figure out getting everyone their stuff from the office. Everyone's going to work from home from now on, but just for now, just stay home and don't worry about it. Just mark your time like normal, and that's that." And we've been home ever since. I mean, apart from the shows that I've done since things have come back, which I think I've done 5 shows now, all of which were, people were very cautious. Um, Apart from that, and apart from that one taping of The Road that I did, which was before the big spike that came in the fall, that taping was done way back in September. Um, Apart from that, I haven't been anywhere, man. We locked it down. I mean, I say I haven't been anywhere. I go do the grocery shopping once every 3 weeks. My wife legit doesn't go anywhere. She's like, "You go ahead, you do that. You'll get in and out faster than me." And she's been here, and I don't blame her. That's the way to do it. I mean, I didn't have access to a gym all of a sudden, so the basement became the gym, man. I had to make do. I wanted to grocery shop less, so we built a garden in the backyard, and most of our vegetables come from there. I built a chicken coop, and we ordered chickens off the internet. I don't have to buy eggs anymore. This is the reality I'm living in. Is that apart from going and doing these shows, I'm not anywhere, and even at the shows,
So let
I
me
haven't.
ask you a very mean but important question. When is the cow coming next?
Uh, if we had
I'm
more
so sorry.
space,
It's too
if
easy. You
if
made
we
it.
had if we had more space, man, honestly, we wanted goats. We really want goats. But for now, it's just me, the wife, 2 cats, and 6 chickens, and that's plenty of work as it is. But yeah, it's this is the reality we're in. I go to shows. I keep my mask on until I'm performing. I don't set up my merch table. I don't go out and talk to fans. I stay in the back and typically only interact with the people I'm going to be in the ring with. I didn't do any shows until I was vaccinated, and even now, uh, after a show, 2 days later, I go and I get a COVID test. And 3 days later after that, I go get another COVID test just to be sure. Because I know I have more shows coming up. And even if I got it, and typically, it's not all the time, but typically if you're vaccinated, the symptoms are much more mild. It's not every time, but typically. So even if I had very mild symptoms from it or something, the last thing I want is to be a vector. I don't want to go to some show and find out that I killed some little old lady because I breathed at her. That's a terrible feeling. And so I've been very cautious, and I'm watching things all the time because I can already start to see things that I was looking forward to and things friends were looking forward to being canceled. I was on the 31st, I was supposed to go see The Residents. I was really looking forward to it. They only sold 25% of the capacity of the venue. They were going to have chairs spaced that you weren't allowed to move, so everyone was away from each other. The band wears masks. Like they've never shown their faces. So it's a natural fit for them to say everyone has to wear a mask. So it was going to be
running a mask contest to see who has the best mask.
Exactly. It was going to be such a fitting, easy, perfect show. All the members of the band are septuagenarians, so they weren't taking any risks. And I was like, this is the perfect way to dip a toe back into some reality. I had tickets to it before everything shut down. It was canceled. It was rescheduled. And it was canceled again and rescheduled. And now they've just canceled the tour. It's not coming back.
That's how I felt about going seeing Hatsumiko. I'm one of those. Yeah.
There you go.
Let me explain. I was so happy when it was canceled because they didn't cancel it in DC till literally 48 hours. And I'm like, you people, it's canceled in Boston. It's canceled in this thing. And it was not fun because I'm like, I don't want to lose $200. I'm not crazy enough to go. And then, I was so happy because I got my money back and I was thrilled. And eventually, when it comes back to the U.S., I'll go. It'll be a fun time. But again, I can wait till 2024. But I did get to see Sailor Moon live. So very important. If you had to pick between the two, one of those is more important than the other. But I digress right there. And so obviously, and I was thinking about going to see Leonard Skinner up in New York, and obviously one of their members just got COVID. And so that's something that is very complicated as well, where anybody is susceptible to this. So it's very crazy what's going on in the world right now. And wrestling is no exception. I don't know what just happened. I don't know what just happened. This is not good. Oh man, I thought I did something. Oof.
Nope, that was on me.
I got enough problems.
That was
Jesus.
my laptop dying because I'm a pro. I'm an absolute pro.
So having said all that, obviously I want to give you an opportunity for self-promotion before something else kills us. Preferably not COVID. I want to immediately destruct the earth. That's really how we got to go off as humanity with a bang.
I'm having to readjust everything now. It's okay. You just keep going. I'm a total pro here.
So obviously, where can people find you? Because Facebook, pages are important. Twitter, I know you're on Twitter. Instagram is extremely important. Obviously, Pro Wrestling Tees is big cartel. Snapchat, TikTok. Obviously, shows that you're going to be a part of or at, and involved in or wrestling on that you could say. Obviously, Limitless. You're going to be backstage interviewing there, so people should check that out. And that's I think this Friday, and then a week from Friday or around the 28th. It's on the schedule, I believe.
Yeah. So this Friday is the show that they're airing that you won't see me unless you look around in the audience. You'll see me standing around, sort of helping out with some stuff.
The next one after that, you'll see me doing the backstage interviews. If you happen to be near Dedham, Massachusetts, then this Friday I will be wrestling for NCW at their annual Big City Rumble. I have no idea. I assume the show is not sold out, but if people are trying to see me there, they should really check. There's a bunch of shows coming up. Anytime Blitzkrieg's running, I will be there. If you want to see me wrestle on a show but not see my face, this is real tricky. Kaiju Big Battle. Check that out. Monster fights in the big suits. You'll never know which one's me, but I am taller than everyone else on the show, so maybe you'll figure it out. Grind at Grind Puro, of course. You want to see all of their shows. Who knows? At some point, I may end up between the ropes. I may end up wrestling there. But at the very least, you can say hi. I'll be helping out. I'll be there working on production, making sure everything goes smoothly for Rip and for Delmy. And for following me online, basically any social media you could want, you will find me at Perry Von Vicious. I was lucky. I was an early adopter to most of them, so I got my name right off the bat. Not that everyone's trying to get that name. Booking inquiries, you can write perryvonvicious@gmail.com, youtube.com/perryvonvicious, prowrestlingtees.com/perryvonvicious. I am everywhere you want to be. Everyone should go buy a shirt. Everyone should go watch some of the videos. I have a new shirt coming soon, hopefully in the next week. It's in the hands of the Pro Wrestling Tees gods to see when they approve it and put it on the site, but it has been submitted, so keep your eyes out for that. And I'm not totally ready to show it yet, but I will say I have some non-shirt merchandise that I will have at live shows that is going to be very unique and very different. Not to give too much away, but I got a 3D printer back around Christmas time, and I've been working on some stuff.
Okay, I'm not going to push you on it then. And obviously, as I've been saying it, and I said it all last year, I'm going to continue to say it, is you have to support indie. What that means is that you actually have to support indie wrestlers. And you should be following them on social media because that goes a long way. You know, when they wrestle, you should be tweeting at them. When they're doing interviews or involved in any wrestling, if you're doing commentary, you got to tweet at them because it makes a huge difference. It also, right now, with crowdless shows or even minimal crowd shows, it gives real good feedback. And it's good for the wrestler, and it's also good for the promotion because if everybody says, I really did not like a match between these two, and it's evident that it wasn't a good match, you know, that's really good feedback. Or if something was missing, or, you know, for instance, you know, maybe, you know, the match before it and then the match after it, you know, did better as far as metrics go, well, you know, that also gives a lot of feedback. Not to mention that it's a really good way to also let promotions know, saying, hey, we want to see more of this wrestler, and we really like where this wrestler is going and what they're doing. And it also helps the algorithms on Twitter. But even going beyond that, obviously going to shows if you feel comfortable. Right now, if you don't feel comfortable, please don't put yourself in a bad situation. Also, you know, right now money's tight as well. So if you're in a bit of a situation where money's tight, you know, there's a lot of free options or very cheap options to watch wrestling. So that's also something to pay attention to. And then even to go further, if you do have some extra cash, going to a show is cool, saying hi to a wrestler, you know, obviously keep your distance, but also buying their merch, especially right now with everything that's going on, goes a long way. Also, speaking about it, because I might as well pump my own self up here, buy me a coffee. This show is completely fan-supported. It may or may not continue that. I got something possibly in the works, but in the meanwhile, please definitely also, you know, like, share, comment, and if you got a few shekels, throw it my way as well, because it is important to support all of indie right now, and it goes a long way. But more importantly, if you have to choose between me and Perry, obviously buy a shirt from him because that shirt will be way better for you, and you also get questioned about it, which means that it's a great opportunity to start a conversation with somebody. And preferably, if you're a guy, it would be a really cute girl, and who knows, maybe you'll get a girlfriend out of it, and then you could thank Perry Von Fishes for that introduction.
Or
So,
it could be a cute guy.
hey, we're equal offenders here. We are equal offenders. Okay, it's all about equality, and I'm an equal offender. But that's what it's all about. Is that it could be anybody cute who floats your boat. Be my guest. Now, having said all that, I'm going to give you the final word.
Yeah, I did this on a podcast last week. They did the exact same moment. They said, let's give you the final word. I already plugged all my stuff. You heard about me for the last hour and a half, almost to the second. I just happened to look up at the time when I said that. Almost exactly an hour and a half of hearing about Perry. Go follow a bunch of my friends. Go follow Levi Shapiro. Go follow Rip Bison, ZPB. Go follow Delmi Exo, okay? These are incredible people working so hard, doing great stuff. Follow the promotions that are kind enough to put us on and kind enough to showcase us. Follow Blitzkrieg Pro. Follow Limitless. Follow NCW. Follow Kaiju Big Battle. Follow Grind Puro, especially. You know, that's going to be a huge project for all of us. You know, we're I know from being around Johnny Torres, ZPB, Rip Bison, Delmi Exo, the whole crew of us, Levi Shapiro out in California, our collective goal isn't about us. If it was about us, Rip would be in Japan. Delmi would be signed to a TV company. Those offers are there and I know it. For us, it's about making wrestling better, to give everyone the kind of things we would like to watch given the opportunity. That's what Grind is going to be about. I know for a fact with Jeremy Leary and Skylar, that's what Blitzkrieg is about. That's what Limitless Wrestling is about with Randy Carver. These are places that need your support. So yeah, you know, you've heard about me for an hour and a half. Go follow all of them. Totally worth your time. They will deliver every single time you tune in.
I agree, and I don't think I could have said it any better myself. And so I think that is a wrap.